The Second Amendment Preservation Act. What is it? Can we really use it to stop Joe Biden's war on our gun rights? And what pitfalls must we avoid when trying to pass this in our state capitol? Aaron Dorr here. I'm going to answer all three questions in 3 minutes or less. Question number one, what is the Second Amendment Preservation Act? SAPA legislation is actually pretty straightforward. What it says is that state and local authorities, this is your state troopers, county sheriff's departments, and city police departments, may only enforce state law when it comes to firearms, ammunition, and accessories. Federal gun control legislation, federal gun control executive actions, and anything else coming out of Joe Biden's White House may not be enforced by state authorities. It's just that simple. Question number two, can we actually do this? How about the supremacy clause? If you watch the news reports, the media, all the gun grabbers, and all the people in Washington, D.C. are trying to tell us we don't have the right at the state level to decide what federal laws we want to enforce. The truth is, we've always had that right. The 10th Amendment and the anti-commandeering doctrine have always said the states have the right to choose which federal laws they wish to interact with. And in a case where federal and state laws contradict, the states have an absolute right to say, we're not going to enforce that here in our state. The court has upheld since the 1800s this idea over and over, all the way up until 2018 Obamacare case, which had the same outcome. The states have this right. Don't take my word for it. Look at the marijuana situation across the country. Federal law makes it a crime to possess any amount of marijuana. But in over half the states in the country, the states have legalized it to some degree, and they have said we're not going to enforce federal laws that touch on marijuana. Now, the question comes up, can't the federal authorities still enforce their own laws on guns or on marijuana? Well, yeah, they can. But the reality is that almost all federal legislation, federal law, is enforced by local authorities. The feds have always counted on local cooperation to enforce their laws. They lack the manpower to do it themselves. And so just as the DEA could come into the states and enforce federal laws on marijuana, but don't dare, the federal government will not come into these states and enforce federal gun laws if a bunch of states enact SAPA legislation. The key thing to avoid, though, the main pitfall is the lack of teeth. You cannot allow a SAPA bill to pass that does not have an enforcement mechanism. Anti-gun city department heads will try to carry out the enforcement of this legislation. You have to have the right to sue them in civil court like Missourians do after their SAPA law took effect this year. Don't fall for any gimmicks. Don't leave the discretion up to the governor to decide what to do or your attorney general. You have to have the right as the individual gun owner to take these departments to civil court for damages. That's how we stop federal gun control.